Hello and welcome everyone, I'm HatTopGaming and we are back with another backlog review. In today's episode we return to the crypt of the Cthulhu inspired horror light shooter and Forgive Me Father 2. The sequel of course to the first game, we start right back up where the first game ends as the madness continues. This boomer shooter with its comic book art style design and mythical elements was clawing at the back of my mind this summer, so I finally took the time to strap myself in and do my best to resist the urge to succumb to darkness and see what horrors awaited. Just like always, we'll be going over the same three things in story, gameplay, and performance on the Steam Deck before giving the game a rating out of 10. And make sure to stick around to the end of the video for a sneak peek at my next review. But with all that out of the way, let's begin. Starting off with the story, we resume control of the priest right after the events of the first game, where we were faced with the monster of chaos attempting to corrupt the world, trying to bring unimaginable horrors from another realm into it. After thwarting its original attempt though, it left the good priest traumatized, and now the very evil we defeated is now attempting to use him as a vessel as it seeks to corrupt the priest's mind and use him as a gateway to unleash his beastly creatures once again. Our journey into madness begins when we awaken a psych ward where the priest was confounded to as he's losing his sanity. But with the weight of the world on his shoulders once again, he does his best to not only find the strength to rise again, he must also face the demons of his past as his traumas are what are fueling the attempts of the demonic entity to release itself upon the world. So as the priest would go about facing said traumas while battling monsters similar to that of the first game, and we must make some tough choices to either be consumed by our darkness or let it go along the way. Similar to the last game as well, we get a lot of things told to us via letters, this time coming from a former friend supposedly, that not only gives us insight as to what's going on, but thins the line between reality and fiction for the priest. Though unlike last time, the story is much more straightforward here, and doesn't require you to find and read random letters and news clippings and so on to understand the story better, though there is still some of that here. Also alongside that, there's no longer two campaigns where the first game you play as the priest and you can play as a reporter with some slight differences. This time it's just the priest. Moving on over to gameplay now, it also is much more of the same. While some of the creatures have new designs and some slightly tweaked versions of attacks, the game remains largely the same as the last one, which, depending on your tastes, could be exactly what you want. Now, personally, I don't really see much difference from one boomer shooter to the next, which is why this genre of shooter just has never really piqued my interest, but it's still, there's still some interest there. They really just kind of come off as all branches off the same tree. Now, what this game does different from the sequel, though, gameplay wise, is completely throwing away the all upgrade system and instead gives you perks that you can choose from. One active power, which requires you to fill up your power meter, which then gives you brief windows to use the special powers such as healing, invincibility, infinite ammo, and so on, and two passive abilities which have a wide array of uses. In order to unlock more of them, you have to complete certain milestones to which they are related. You can swap between them in the asylum as it acts as a central hub between missions, and alongside that, they also threw out the old gun upgrade system where now instead of branching paths to upgrade them, you have a shop where you can use special weapon points to choose from 3 extra variants of each gun, each being more monster corrupted from the last, but of course alongside how mutated they are, they greatly change what they do and how they can be used in combat. Now, I personally thought some of them were clearly better than others, but hey, that's why they give you choices. I think this change is fine, and I think it really just makes you think about what gun you want to swap out / upgrade first, as the different versions vary differently and heavily from usability and power. The actual shooting and dodging you do is still the same and still has that same floaty feel to it. I did like how the creatures have their own form of attack patterns, some blitz, some take cover between shots, air raid enemies, and so on. The game still follows the same script from last time, and is just much more closer to a corridor shooter. You taking on a room full of enemies, dispatching them, trying to do some parkour to get some red, blue, or yellow keys, opening a door to find more enemies, and repeat the process until the level is complete. I will say the level design is a strong part of the game as the levels are very unique, and even those that feel samey are spread out. You have the Arctic level, the World War II trenches, Haunted Mansion, laboratories, graveyards, psychedelic forests, and much more. Everything gameplay wise really does feed well into itself, though I do wish they'd add in some ability to check in and see where you are and where you're supposed to go, as I found myself getting lost a few times and just wasting time looking around for a specific lever or button that I missed. If you've played a boomer shooter before, I feel like you've played all of them in my opinion, but this one being as stylized as it is with the Cthulhu mask on, it does serve as its own unique experience. Moving on to performance now, I cross-played this game between the Xbox Rogue Ally X and the Steam Deck. Focusing on my Steam Deck experience first though, I will say the game greatly improved from the first one with its general stability and optimization. I was playing on the default settings which basically has everything running on low, and I also turned off the filigrane, VSync, motion blur, and a few other small personal preferences I always turn off when playing games. With the game having the art style it does, you really can't notice you're on low settings, and everything was very clear to see, especially given the expansive color palette they use. Much like the last game though, the frame rate wasn't the best. It would stay in the 40s for the most part, but it would dip down to the 30s, Though unlike the last game, they seem to have worked out the issues where some areas would just dip into the 20s. I will note the Steam Deck does run hot and I could hear the fan doing its best to keep it cool. As you may imagine, it was eating up the battery pretty heavily. We're talking like one whole mission eating up about 30 to 40% of the battery, damn near. So I don't know if I would pick this up as my travel game. As for the Xbox Rogue Ally X, I was playing on silent 30-watt mode with medium settings, but I have the same sliders turned off like the motion blur and such that I mentioned earlier. The frame rate was much higher, being in the low 50s, and held really well there. I know if I went into the performance mode or turbo, I could have cranked the settings way higher, but I wanted to have an experience close to the Steam Deck's power, just to see how big the gap was from the Xbox's silent 13-watt to the Steam Deck doing its best. It was definitely noticeable, but not so much to a degree where it was egregious by any means. It ran better, of course, but only by so much. Overall, performance-wise, it ran well on both systems. Just be mindful of battery life if you're playing on the Steam Deck, as even on the Xbox Rogue Ally X, it still was taking up a fair share of its battery life. So in the end, how did I feel about Forgive Me Father 2? Well, after beating the game in 9.4 hours and getting 14 of the 32 achievements along the way, I noticed the game was a bit shorter than the first and has streamlined a number of things comparatively. It really feels like they were almost hesitant to keep down the same path from the first game, as rather than keeping to the wackier side of the first one with its odd upgrade system, they gave it a much more basic approach. They did a better job with the story in my opinion, as everything felt much more concise and clear. I enjoyed the new look of the enemies, and the level design was still a big plus. Combat was much more of the same, of course, but rather than keep the over-the-top boss battles from the first game, they really shrunk it all down and just made 4 versions of the same enemy for all the bosses, including the last one, which was really lame. Only one of them was unique because they added in some parkour into the fight, but besides him, I was able to beat all of them in just one go. I had more trouble in some of the final stages of levels, where they just throw everything at you in a small room, than I did with the actual boss fights, and that should not be the case. The game really felt like one step forward, 2 steps back in a lot of ways. The things that were improved around the margins were noticeable, but it was still just around the margins, while the bigger changes were much more in your face, and it felt like it took away from the identity they had established in the first game. It's still fun, of course, and I think I picked up the game at the perfect time, as it took me just under a week to beat, as I was grinding away at it when I could. Really, my biggest complaint here is before you face the final boss, you do this like room rush where you have to beat 6 or 8 of rush rooms, where as soon as you spawn in and you have the health and ammo waiting for you, there's a typhoon of enemies that just collapses on you. Some of the rooms are easier than others, but man, I just really hate the gimmick of let me shove you in a closet and have you fist fight 4 guys in there, that all boomer shooters seem to do. It gets old and quick, so having to do 8 of those back to back to back to back is just draining. They all varied in layout at least, so I didn't feel like I was just repeating the same level, but my god dude, some of them were just awful. The only good thing was that you could at least choose which order you went in, but you still had to face the ones that you didn't want to at some point. Look, if you like boomer shooters, this is much more akin to something like the old school Doom games, and there's definitely fun to be had here. I played on hard mode, and like I said, I was just grinding away as I found myself enjoying what I was playing. Having beat the first game last year, I was in the mood for the sequel, and is satisfied. I think they're both solid games, but they're more standout for their visuals than anything else, and frankly, I'm going to give the game a 7 out of 10. It's fun, it's quick and to the point, it's not something I'm really going to spare any thoughts to looking back on, I still had some fun. And when playing games or reviewing them, I think that's what matters most. Even if the game as a whole has some shortcomings and things I didn't really like here and there. But that's going to do it for me today, guys. Hope you all enjoyed today's review of Forgive Me Father 2. If you have any thoughts, opinions, or questions you want me to answer, leave them down in the comment section down below. If you played the game for yourself already, either the first or now the second, let me know what you thought as well. If you were on the fence about buying the game, let me know if I encouraged you or discouraged you from buying it. Don't forget to follow me on social media to keep up to date with everything going on with the channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video for more content just like this. I'm HatTopGaming. Thank you once again for tuning in to today's backlog review, and I'll see you all later. Peace.
The Empire's hunting Jedi survivors. Now, they know who you are.
I can't change the past,
You trespass, Jedi.
but I'm done hiding.
Cal Kestis.
You will always struggle.
It's the choice to keep fighting